8:20 exactly, and the North Gauteng High Court's ruling, which reviewed and set aside former National Commissioner of Correctional Services Arthur Fraser's decision to place former President Jacob Zuma on medical parole, was met with righteous anger, sadness, and disillusionment. And Carl Niehaus, former spokesperson for the ruling ANC, says that the ruling is out of kilter with our constitution. Let's delve more deeply into this matter with Carl Niehaus. He's on the line. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
And thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you on the show. So, you're saying that this is totally out of kilter with our constitution. How so?
It's a very strange judgment because it challenges the authority of the Commissioner of Correctional Services, which has been clear throughout, and I'm not talking off the top of my head. I've been involved with the Department of Correctional Services for many, many years, and in fact, I was for a number of years also the chairperson of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services. There's a clear authority granted to the Commissioner, and now suddenly this judgment is undermining that authority. The position always had been, and it is provided for in the law, that the Commissioner takes the final decision. Yes, there are recommendations from parole boards, including also the medical parole board, but they have not got the final say. Our impression is that this judgment had been turning the law on its head because of a vindictive approach by the judge, who wanted at all and every cost to get President Jacob Zuma back into jail, abusing and misinterpreting the law on the one hand, and on the other hand, making use of evidence and conjecture on the basis of stories that he even took from newspaper articles in the Sunday Times, etc., etc. So that is why I believe that not only President Zuma's personal lawyers, but also the Department of Correctional Services feels strongly that this judgment is wrong and that it should be and will be challenged in court. That's why they have presented their appeals, and those appeals will be heard tomorrow.
So basically, what we're looking here is the incursion into the domain of another arm of the state, which is bound, well, has caused tensions between the judiciary and the executive. Because what you're really saying is that courts are not entitled to prescribe to the executive branch of government how long a convicted person should be detained, thereby usurping the functions of the executive. And that's what's happened in this instance, has it not?
Absolutely. You've summarized it perfectly correctly. There was a very good article in the Sunday Independent of yesterday by Professor Sipu Siepe, which summarized that point that you made just now perfectly well. It cannot be that the Department of Correctional Services is told by the court how long a prisoner can be incarcerated. Those two arms operate on different levels, and it is correct to say that it is the determination of the Department of Correctional Services and specifically the Commissioner to grant parole, and that our courts and our judges cannot second guess those decisions.
Okay, let's look at the two scenarios here. And it's kind of problematic about the whisperings that we're hearing. There are some insightful emails making the rounds suggesting that if Jacob Zuma is to be sent to prison again to serve out the remainder of his term or his term as he was sentenced, that there's going to be another uprising or rioting. So that's obviously worst case scenario. What would the best case scenario look like? But then also people are going to suggest that a precedent has been set. How do you view this? Let's try and be very objective, viewing the worst case and the best case scenarios as far as the situation is concerned.
Well, obviously, this judgment has caused tension. And it causes tension on two levels. One is the legal level that we've just discussed, but it also causes tension within the societal and political environment because there is a strong feeling that there is no objectivity and that there's a clear intention to target and to victimize President Jacob Zuma. So that causes anger. What I have said, and others who have expressed that concern and that anger, is that it is our democratic right to protest. It is our democratic right to raise our concerns about this judgment and overall the treatment of President Jacob Zuma. Now, when we say so, it doesn't mean that we are making a call for violence or for unrest. We are talking about our democratic right, which we will execute within the parameters of the law in a peaceful manner. Something that many of us, including myself, had fought for and even went to prison for during the liberation struggle. It is a malicious attempt to misrepresent that position that we hold. When there are others who try to say that any protest against the treatment of President Zuma and the manner in which the law is being abused in the way that he is being treated will lead to violence. It is not true, and it is not the intention. And we shouldn't use those kind of narratives to try and undermine the democratic rights that are there for us as enshrined within the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
How does Jacob Zuma feel right now as this is playing out? We do know that he has a very strong support base, you being one of those people, also the veterans, and a whole host of other people. He has lots of strong support in KZN itself. How does he view this whole situation? And do you believe that if he puts out a very strong message telling people to remain calm and to allow the law to take its course, common sense will prevail, and on both sides. On the sides of his supporters not being happy by the turn of events, and by the courts. And having said that as well, let's bring in the Raymond Zondo's issue here as well, because we know that that ruling and the involvement and the sentiments from Raymond Zondo's initial refusal to recuse himself in a case where he's conflicted and where he'd also become a witness, raises a lot of questions, because the thinking is that it was Zuma who appointed him in the first place. So two totally different questions that I've posed to you. If you'd like to respond, please.
Well, let me first of all say that it is extraordinary that President Zuma's appeal on the ruling that Mr. Justice Raymond Zondo made on his own matter, that he would not recuse himself, has still not yet been heard by the appeal court. That is extraordinary, while we have seen a whole lot of other events cascading almost out of control related to that particular issue. So that outstanding matter is something which we all should be concerned about, because we must remember that it was Mr. Justice Zondo who rushed past the appellate division to the Constitutional Court to get a judgment against President Zuma and to get President Zuma imprisoned. That in itself raises many questions about the manner in which our judicial system operates, and it raises many questions about the fairness in general and specifically with regards to President Zuma that we are seeing. With regards to the first part of your question, President Zuma is in good spirits. He's obviously an elderly gentleman of 79, As we have heard from the presentations that have been made also to the Department of Correctional Services and the medical presentations that were made by several doctors, he is not in good health. So his health has to be considered carefully, and that was the context in which the Department of Correctional Services, through the Commissioner, had taken the decision for medical parole. So this must be taken into consideration in the general context. Yes, the supporters of President Zuma, and I must emphasize to you, those supporters are not just in KwaZulu-Natal, they're throughout the country. I'm 100% certain that President Zuma is still today the most popular politician in South Africa. You can see the support base that he has. Recently, when he published his book, it sold out within half a day, and there are many outstanding orders waiting, all an indication of his popularity. So President Zuma has given us an indication that he doesn't want violence and unrest in the manner in which he had dealt with his first situation when he had to go to prison. He went to the Escort Correctional Services facility and handed himself over. And he made it clear that he did so because he could see the volatile situation at Nkandla, and he didn't want to have bloodshed in his name. So that message he has delivered. He doesn't need to keep on delivering the same message. The emphasis that I need to make to you today, and that's the one that I made earlier, is we mustn't try to use this so-called conjured up possible threat of unrest and violence to try and muzzle supporters of President Zuma from expressing their legitimate outrage at the manner in which he is being treated. I repeat to you again, it is our democratic right to express our opposition to the manner in which President Zuma is being treated, to say that we do not want to see him to go back to prison, and to raise concerns about the manner in which this judgment had unfolded and the manner in which the judge had misinterpreted, in our interpretation, the law. So that's the context, and that one we cannot possibly allow to be undermined. We will continue to express our concern and our opposition to this judgment and the manner in which President Zuma is being treated.
Carl, in closing, really what you're talking about is the split, that divide in the ANC, the two factions that are just at loggerheads with each other and trying to score points. Some people would argue, and at the cost of Jacob Zuma's health and well-being. Other people would argue he brought it upon himself by all of this, the scandal, the state capture scandal, which has outraged the citizens of South Africa. So, but we do know that there's this infighting, this deep division within the ANC. Do you think that that can ever be, that fracture, could it ever be mended? Or are we talking of an irreparable situation here? And possibly going into the future, whether it is Zuma and Ramaphosa or future leaders, that will never ever be mended?
Let me first of all say to you, it is not President Zuma who brought this treatment onto himself. The manner in which he's being treated has been imposed on him through many different interest groups in our society, but primarily the white monopoly capitalist group, who are hell-bent on destroying him and those who want to challenge their continuing control over the South African economy. So you talk about two factions. I wouldn't talk like that. I will say there are those within the African National Congress who could continue to be committed to the historical revolutionary task of the ANC. That is the implementation of the African claims that preceded the Freedom Charter, and the radical economic transformation policy program that is a resolution of the ANC's 54th National Conference, which flows from that historical background that I've just sketched for you. That is the real ANC. Then there are those within the ANC who've infiltrated, who've wormed themselves into the African National Congress, who have become the agents of white monopoly capitalism, who filled their pockets with monies that had been paid to them to sell out the African National Congress. Those are the ones that are destroying the African National Congress. They are not the real ANC. And under these circumstances, when you talk about unity, unity can only be achieved if we return to that historical revolutionary task of the African National Congress. And that's why we have said, and we've reached a point, we have said very clearly, that there are certain people within the ANC who no longer can be considered to be African National Congress, who no longer can be considered to be true to the historical task of the ANC. And we include among those President Cyril Ramaphosa and a very large sector of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress, who have managed to get into their positions not through proper democratic processes, not through a proper democratic election process at the 54th National Conference, but by the use of money, using more than R1 billion to buy votes in order to get into those positions. And the future of the ANC depends on those people being dealt with, that they have to be removed from the leadership positions of the African National Congress. They are busy destroying the ANC. Ultimately, unity is important, but unity has always got to be premised on the basis of principle, and those principles need to be derived from the historical, political task and duty of the African National Congress, which is the full liberation of Black South Africans and specifically Africans, and that full liberation, as the longest serving president of the African National Congress, Comrade O.R. Tambo, never tired to remind us, is never just about the vote, but it is also about the economic empowerment of Black and African South Africans, and making sure that Black South Africans, who are the majority of people in this country, can and will truly be in control of this economy, and through that control will be able to scale the commanding heights of our economy.
Carl Niehaus, what a pleasure to hear your perspective on this issue this morning. Undoubtedly, you are an absolute diehard ANC, and I can hear from the way you speak with much passion that you want the ANC to continue flourishing in the principles. It's obviously the true principles of the ANC. Thank you so much for sharing with us this morning. Go well.
Thank you so much, and may I wish all your listeners, if I do not talk to you again this month, a very happy festive season, and especially that they will share with their families love and care. Families are our wealth. Thank you.
Absolutely, and the very, very same to you and your loved ones. Go well.
Goodbye.
8:40 exactly. That was Carl Niehaus talking to us about, obviously, Zuma's possible re-incarceration. So it's really a wait and see as to what's going to unfold going forward. And for a change, we've heard another perspective on the whole Zuma saga. 8:40 exactly. When we come back, we'll be talking to Fahad Hussein regarding the Afghanistani situation.
Freedom Stationery supply Marlin and Marlin